Welcome to the Industrial Edge podcast with me, Joe Haggis. In this podcast, we sit down with a broad range of professionals who are involved in a wide range of industrial settings. From maintenance and reliability professionals, facility managers, engineers, through to operations and production leaders, consultants, and business owners who support all things that keep the modern world we live in safe, productive, and efficient. We discuss the unique stories our guests have been on personally, while getting into some of the deeper details, challenges, and opportunities that face them in their particular industries and areas of specialisation. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome, Chris. We've got Chris Hallum from UE Systems who joins us. And Chris, you're the Director of Global Accounts now. You've been with that company for over 10 years, right? Which is impressive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just over 10 years now, I think it is. Actually,
brilliant.
last month. But yeah.
So chasing down your time in the RAF and your tenure there as well, that'll take a bit of beating.
That's it. That's still my longest career so far. So yeah,
you're
only
not far
just.
off though.
No, not far. Not
far off. But welcome, mate. Great to have you on. Fellow podcaster as well. We were just talking about that before we hit record. So we're just talking about the effort that goes behind the seenes and the time spent, etc. So thanks again for coming on and spending the time.
No, you're welcome.
Isn't. Thanks, Chris. Chris, I'm going to start with a bigger question, and I saw your post actually recently, which might connect into it a little bit further on. But Chris, in your experience, what's the biggest thing industry still gets wrong or misunderstands about reliability? A bit of a big question to start. I know I don't ease you in.
That's a big question. I mean, how much time do we have?
We can take the full 40 minutes, but let's see how we go.
I mean, there's a lot of things in that question there that could be, problems where industry struggle. I mean, it depends on where you want to look. I would say, from a holistic approach within industry, it's departments realizing their role in the world of reliability. And it's like a chain, in my opinion, reliability. It's like a chain, and every department has their involvement. And if a certain department isn't on board with it or pulling their weight in that vision, then the chain falls over. You look at HR, you look at procurement, you look at maintenance, you look all over the place. They all have a responsibility there. Examples there, you see engineering or maintenance teams wanting to invest in certain technology. They have to go to procurement. They tell procurement what they're after, and then procurement buy them something cheaper. That's not what they're after, not what they wanted, not what was going to fit, and things like that, and doesn't do the task. So again, procurement not involved in the conversation from the start, for example, and understanding the world of reliability.
Yeah, and I like the way you use that chain analogy, right? It is a chain, and it's almost got to have tension all the way through it, whether it's end to end or in a circle, or however you want to view it. I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of everyone's got a part to play when it comes to reliability, right? I think that's absolutely key. I was talking about to Gary Tyne about this as well. It's interesting, right? I think it's challenging because, and we say the same thing with safety. We say the same thing. I saw a post actually just today talking about asset management. Everyone, safety is everyone's responsibility. Asset management's everyone's responsibility, and so is reliability. And I think that's what the biggest challenge is, though, right? Is all these different tensions that exist within an organization that arguably are many people's responsibility, and getting the ownership and the drive for that is can be a challenge.
I think if you think about it as well, one of the biggest, if you look really at it, it's not the world of reliability or the technologies or the strategies, it's the change that causes the biggest issue normally. People are used to doing things the way they've always done them. We've always done it this way and we've never had a problem before, not realizing that they're getting call outs on a Sunday evening, doing double time and costing a fortune and lost production and everything else, where if they just changed the way they did things slightly, they'd be able to avoid those sort of things. But again, it's that willingness to change is the hardest part, I think, to sell to an organization when trying to implement this.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, I completely agree. Human change, human behavior, big part of it, and it's easy to. But I think to get over that, right? It's about introducing people slowly, showing the benefits, pilots, that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Easing people in slowly, right? And they can be part of the change, right? I think has always works well as well, right?
That's right. But I mean, it's human nature as well. Some people are going to be really, you're going to be champions that are really willing to do this and try that change. And you're going to have some people that will just, yeah, fold across their arms and try and fight it out as such.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. No, good, Chris. Really good. We'll go down memory lane if that's okay, Chris. You spent 13 years in the Royal Air Force, similar to myself, a little bit less, half the amount of time I did, but also in the RAF, my background. Talk to us, Chris, about your, I suppose, your reflections on your time in the RAF now. You've been out the armed forces for over 10 years. It's probably a good time to not be in the armed forces the way the world is at the moment, should we say? But what did your time in the Air Force teach you about reliability, right? Maintenance, in your day to day work, and the work that you do nowadays. What when you reflect back, what are those foundational pieces that you
Oh,
really took away?
there's a lot of reflecting back now, looking at what I know now compared to what I didn't know then that I think could have helped in a lot of ways. I mean, I joined the military straight out of school. So I left after doing A levels, joined the military at just turned 19, I think it was at the time. And yeah, I mean, joining the military, I think for young people is almost such a good thing.
I
It
agree.
gets you independent. It teaches you to live by yourself. It teaches you lots of core foundational skills that you can apply in any walk of life, which only places like the military can actually give you that sort of, foundation. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I am today either, or the person that I am, the character that I am, because I knew that before I joined the military, I was tied to my mother's apron strings, you could say. I hadn't traveled anywhere, I hadn't done anything, I wouldn't say boo to a goose or anything. And then the military just changed me entirely. And if I look at that side of the trade as well, because that's why I joined the military, is getting a trade is a good qualification in trades. And we used to look after sort of like navigation aids on airfields, communication systems, and satellite comms and stuff like that. And if I look at the maintenance procedures that we did, it was all very much time based. It'll be after so many running hours, after every 3 months we do this, every week we do this, every month we do this, regardless of the condition. And the number of times looking back that we would take a piece of equipment out of operation for servicing, do that service, run it back up, and within an hour it's failed. Would it have failed if we didn't do that service as such, for example? And it's that thing of, we were doing maintenance for maintenance sake, really, based on time recommendations. It didn't matter of all the variables that might have had that impact on it. So we weren't looking at it based on condition. So yeah, I would certainly go, yeah, I could definitely go back now and use predictive technologies or something like that in many walks of life within that world, but also look at optimizing the PM schedules as well. I think there was a lot of that could have been done. There's a lot of stuff there that didn't really need to be done at times. So yeah, I think looking back at it, it was very much in an old fashioned type of traditional way of doing PMs, I'd say.
Yeah, nice. No, it's good. It's good reflections as well, right? I think coming back to what you start your answer there, similarly, like 19, I think I'd encourage any young person, like exactly, completely agree with you. It gives you such good foundational skills. I had to grow up pretty quickly, like you say. Just even those core basic life skills, right? I think it even gives you to start with. Completely agree with you. Fantastic way
Yeah.
of doing
I
that,
would.
and earning a trade as well, like you say.
Exactly. Although I did question myself when I was literally joining at 1 month after 9/11 it was as well. So I was kind of wondering, I think military life is going to change a little bit going forward after that event. And I was just joining at the start of it. So yeah, it's geopolitics you can never really predict. I mean, look at the climate now.
Yeah,
It's one of those
absolutely.
things. But I would still encourage anyone to join as well.
I completely agree. There's always going to be conflicts around the world. Unfortunately, it's just the way of human behavior and human nature. Unfortunately, but I completely agree. Again, coming back to your point around trade, fantastic training that I got. I'm not sure how long your trade training was, right? But mine was at least, I think it was 14 months long.
Yeah, it was nearly
Really
2
good
years, I think.
foundational
Yeah.
skills. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it was nearly 2 years long, and it was kind of,
Well,
yeah, very intense, deep levels of mathematics, physics, and sciences and everything else, and then going into the practical, technical side of it, and radar principles, SATCOM principles, all of that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, really, I've thoroughly enjoyable, and I still apply a lot of it today, even in the world of ultrasound. I use a lot of things that we learnt from radio principles and satellite principles in today's yeah reliability talks.
Yeah, brilliant. No, it's good. And again, those such, and again, a lot of places, you say that the amount of training you get there, a year, 2 years, that's a big investment, right? And I'm always very grateful of that, like you say. But the depth of knowledge that you've got now, like you're saying, you're still using is really good. So no, really good reflections, and yeah, like you say, good foundation, a good place to start your career, especially like you say, getting a trade out of it at the end as well, which is great. Um, Chris, moving on to I know you moved from the RF and did a short period of time as a technical trainer as well, and like I say, now you've been with UE Systems for over 10 years. Also, I suppose, what's the biggest change you've seen during? I suppose mostly during your time in UE Systems. I'm sure the technology has changed massively over those 10 years, and how fast it's grown. Maybe not. But what's your biggest reflection in terms of specifically during your time during UE Systems, with UE
Yeah, I mean,
Systems? What's the
no,
biggest
absolutely.
progressions you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I left the military, my last posting in the military was as a technical trainer teaching.
Nice.
So I was doing a lot of training. So then, as I left the RAF, I moved into the world of full-time training, basically in the railway sector. Straight afterwards, for a little while, just teaching future engineers, apprentices, and things like that, electrical principles and whatnot. And then joined UE Systems as a trainer, teaching people the use of ultrasound, how to get the best out of their technologies and everything else on their plants. And I would say when I first came into this world, a lot of the systems were very handheld, very manual, very inspector led. So you were very keen to be making sure that you're teaching the things about like consistency with data. Good data means consistent data, reliable data, things like that. And I think over the period of time, as I've moved through different roles within the organization, um, we're seeing more of an adaptation now of the world of IoT, online sensors over that period of time as well. I mean, it was there when I first started, but it was not as it's more wired sensors and things like that. The wirelesses were just coming into the market, I would say, a little bit, but again, they were quite expensive. And over the years now, it's got more and more cheaper to get those deployed and things like that. There's more available and whatnot. And I'd say, yeah, that's where I've seen the big change go, is into the sensor world. But also that challenge as well with educating people that the world doesn't revolve around sensors either. You can't kit out an entire plant with remote online sensors. A sensor doesn't replace a technician, an engineer. There's eyes, their senses, their nose, their smell, and things like that. Is those sort of changes. I think that's what I would say is seen. And then at the moment, the adoption of AI as well is going to be the next stage, I think, after the sensors.
Yeah, absolutely. No, good reflections, and I think, like you say, seeing that, it's much from my perspective anyway. It seems to be much more competitive now in that space, from a provider perspective, right? Competitors to UE Systems and others, trying to put different products in the markets. There's a lot of different businesses popping up. .ai at the end, lots of them, etc. So it seems to be much more competitive, and it just shows you, I suppose, how big that market segment is, should we say, as well,
Oh,
right? So,
absolutely. The
brilliant.
condition monitoring market is due to grow exponentially over the coming years, with more and more industries realizing with the adaptation of strong reliability programs, the potential savings to their businesses they can make. So more and more people getting into it. So that obviously people are getting then into that market of being able to provide sensing technology. And I mean, if you just look at the world of online vibration sensors, that every street corner you can buy a different vibration sensor these days. So again, which drives down the price and things like that and breeds more competition. Um, with UE Systems, I think there's a little bit of an edge there, whereas we are ultrasound. That's our technology is ultrasound, not vibration as such. That's where we focus that early indication of change and stuff like that. So we're a little bit different to the world of vibration, but still in that market, you could say, really competing with people to put that technology in the front of their eyes as such.
Yeah, good to know. And maybe my naivety, almost not knowing the businesses maybe as well of a should have before. joining and speaking to you, but it still is ultrasound that is your core focus as a business. Is that's what you're saying
That
there? Yeah.
is, yeah, UE systems is the use of using ultrasound to help us be that way in which we can, change the way people listen to their assets, understand what the machines are asking of them, what they're telling us, and what we're then prescribing to the user to, help prolong the life of that asset and avoid undue failures as such.
Yeah, brilliant. No, good. No, good to know, Chris. Thank you. Um, Coming onto your podcast now and talking reliability podcast, just to change it up a little bit. What made you start the podcast?
No, absolutely. I mean, I've been, like I say, my background in engineering and teaching people has always been that thing about getting education out to people, and I'm always keen to get education out. And as I moved into UE systems in a training perspective, I also got involved in the sales side of things and, looking at how people sell technologies, sell change and stuff like that. To me was more about education, not necessarily about selling a product, but actually educating people in the right way to do things and what is possible, what options are out there and how you can tackle that instead of trying to force one line that if it was good or not. And I would say the world of COVID, when we were all stuck at home, a lot of people were stuck with online, like we're doing today, for example. Before COVID times, this sort of thing never really existed,
Yeah,
really, or was
absolutely.
aware of it. So I started doing a lot of webinars during COVID times, just to get education out to people, just to try and teach people about things that, especially around the world of ultrasound, educate people, free things that they could get on board with, listen to, break up the day, and do those sort of things. And I carried that on after COVID. And again, I do a lot of conferences, trade shows where I do a lot of talks and educate people. And yeah, I was getting a bit bored of doing the same thing, month after month, and thought, well, how hard could a podcast be? Let's do a podcast and educate people. Yeah,
Very hard.
what did I know? What did I know at the time? As soon as I came up with that idea, I spoke with our marketing team and they kind of put in place all the things I needed to get in place. And I was thinking, wow, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done this, but now I'm in.
Yeah,
So
good
yeah,
on
the aim there was to try and get people from industry onto the podcast that could share the problems they faced, and get them to talk about those problems, how they tackled them, and how they then made success, so that other people could listen to that as well. Because I know, from one plant to another, the engineering teams are facing the same challenges, but some people might be tackling it in a different way that the others might not have thought about. So that was what the aim of it was. And then at the end of the series was to then host an in-person live event where we bring all of those people together, and get people just having almost like a peer review group, but just talking to each other about their day-to-day lives and their work. Um, and I think, yeah, it was really, I think it was, I'd like to think it was successful. It
Yeah,
felt fun
absolutely.
doing it, even though it was stressful at times. But I want, covering other things, general things as well. You're just looking at not just reliability, but us as human beings as well, looking at culture, looking at how we look after ourselves. I mean, I must admit, I've been a victim of unscheduled downtime on myself because I haven't looked after myself in the past as well as I should have done, not looking at the warning signs. So yeah, I'll be doing more podcasting like that in the future as well, I
Yeah,
think.
brilliant. No, good. That's really good, and I think I absolutely love that. Again, you've done it around education, right? Sharing knowledge, sharing different perspectives, like you say. I think it's always good. Many people are challenged with the same problems, should we say, or very similar problems, and getting people to talk about it more. Especially, sometimes you feel like you're a little bit isolated. Especially, I can imagine if you're in a smaller business, let's say medium, small size business, you've got a challenge. Speaking to people in a community, I think is a great way of
It is.
sharing information. And my background, obviously, being at Amazon, I was very lucky that in a size organization that size, we used to do that quite well internally, should we say? Starting to get,
Mm.
I noticed the business seems to be doing that better externally as well. But you don't always have that luxury if you're a small or a medium sized business. So I think it's brilliant. Really good. Good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, communication is key, especially when you've got teams like, especially at UE, we're all over the world as such, is on different time zones and that. But we don't really see people in person that often. So platforms like these are fantastic to be able to get that communication going. That's one thing out of COVID that was a positive, is that we were more interconnected, I'd say, and getting that communication out there. But with the digital world and the evolution of how people get their information now, people don't necessarily go out in person to look at stuff, and they can just look at on their phone and pick up information more freely now. Hence, how podcasts can be a good way of getting that information out there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's more accessible, and at the same time, there's more volume of it as well. So again, I think that's healthy in regards of different people have different opinions, different ways of doing things, like you say, different ways to. There's more than one way to skin the cat, as they always say. Lots of
Absolutely.
different ways to solve a problem. So no, brilliant, good. Chris, moving into going into a bit more condition monitoring and I suppose ultrasound predictive sort of technologies. I've got a question here, and it's where do you see the biggest gaps with people training, education, or technology adoption? And maybe we've already touched on that and answered that, but where do you see the biggest gaps? I suppose specifically, let's maybe go into the kind of the training, the education piece to kind of go into that a little bit more. Where are the biggest gaps? Is it budget, or is it lack of this information that like we've just spoke about? Is it
Yeah,
adoption? Is
this
it
is yeah, it's a
a
fun
challenge?
one. This is one that I talk about quite a lot with people, and I would say that, you look at the organizations that will invest in these sort of things, they might be happy to invest in the technology itself. They don't really put any value on actually training the people to get the best out of that kit. They think, oh yeah, this piece of kit, 50, $60,000 or whatever it is, yeah, yeah, we got budget for that. But then, oh look, there's a bit of training to go with it. That's maybe for 4 days at $1,000. Oh yeah, I'm not interested in that. And it's kind of like, guys, without this piece of kit is just useless. And I think, that I see that quite a lot, to be honest. People's training budgets are always going down. Other budgets are staying the same, but training budgets are getting cut. And it's kind of like, invest in the people, because those are the people that are going to make the changes. I think, yeah, that's one of the biggest things I've seen recently is a lack of value on training. Without that training, that piece of technology or that program that you want to implement is just not going to get anywhere, or it'll get to a certain point and then it won't go any further, because there's a lack of that regular investment. And that's something that I always preach to anybody that I'm talking to in any industry when we're looking at typical programs, from energy savings to condition monitoring, lubrication programs, is that this is the technology that can help you with that, but this is the training pathway that your team needs to go on to be able to get the best out of that technology as well and to make the project a success. So yeah, I think the value on training, that's the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose to answer, I was saying there around people, training, technology, you can't have one without the other, right? You need to invest in all those spaces, arguably to get the best out of them, right? There's no point having like you say, the best, um, most up to date equipment if people don't know how to use it, don't know how to, maybe they know how to use it, but again, like you say, that they definitely won't know how to get the best out of it. You won't be able to
Yeah,
do the let's say the more advanced stuff and really get the big benefit out of it. So yeah, I completely agree. I think you do see that, these budget always ring fence for maybe hardware as opposed to the people investment, and it's almost like feels like you've almost got to push it together as a bundle, right? I suppose, and make sure
it
people
is.
understand it's got to go together. Yeah,
Yeah, training is always got to be part of any sort of project, any sort of program that's going anywhere. It should be embedded in there as to how far are we going to educate these people and support them and invest in them to make changes for the organization. I have I have come across stories before in the past where people have gone, well, my guys are engineers. They don't need any more training. I was like, as if they should just know how to use a very detailed vibration analyzer. So yeah, I have seen those sort of things before in the past.
I completely agree. I think it's almost commonplace, right? And even sometimes been guilty of that myself as a maintenance manager, saying, "Oh well, figure it out," sort of approach, and it's not the right approach. You're completely right. Especially nowadays, things are getting way more complex than they ever have been. And if again people don't understand it, don't know how to use that equipment, we need to support people by training them especially people that are, early in their careers, maybe, not as many apprenticeships arguably out there now. So again, exactly what we just spoke about, yourself and me had a great foundational level of training in the military. People aren't always getting that these days, right? In regards of that
That's
training.
right.
It feels less so. Maybe I could be wrong there, but again, that's where that training specifically, teaching the foundation, teaching the fundamentals, and then obviously, teaching the more detailed stuff on how
No.
to use the equipment is more important now than it ever was. Yeah.
No, I think you could also look as well that I would say that we're still in the process of going through that baby boom generation that are going into retirement still as well, where there's a very big depth of knowledge, experience, a very detailed level of training and learning in the past from them, and passing that on to the younger generation, the apprentices. And like you say, there's not as many coming through that are going out the other side, you could say. Bridging that gap in knowledge and experience is paramount at the moment. And again, if you haven't got enough people coming in at the bottom, it's a big issue with industry right now is trades, people skilled and qualified. They're hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think even if you just look at natural trends as well, people seem to be moving roles a lot more, not staying in companies, like you say, someone that's been in, a big industrial firm for 20, 30, 40 years. Again, they have that institutional knowledge, whereas you get people that are sort of hopping, 2 years, 3 years, you lose that knowledge, right? And again, that combined with maybe less foundational training and etc. and a lack of apprenticeships, I think is it can be a real
Yep.
challenge. And I know we always, many people do speak about that, but it's a genuine issue, right? It's a
Yeah.
slow burning one though, right? It's not a immediate one. It feels like it's a bit more of a slow burning one that's gonna erode over time, maybe.
That's
Um,
it. Like, I think with these people that are leaving after a couple of years as well, which yeah, you do see a lot in almost all industries, is that if would that still happen if they invested a little bit more in those people, gave them a bit more, raised them up a bit more, things like would that still happen? I think it might not.
Yeah, you're right. I remember speaking to Luke about this. Yeah, absolutely right. And well, what if I remember Luke saying, what if they leave? Well, what if they stay? And it's, if they did eventually leave, well, that's a great place to work. I got trained, I got upskilled, etc. It becomes a selling point almost of your organization in a roundabout way. But you're absolutely right. I think it helps retention of people. If you invest in them, you invest in training with them. Absolutely. No, good.
Exactly.
Good. Um, Moving to the next question, Chris. So, I've got a question here of your, of your customers and clients. What separates those that get real value from ultrasound and versus those that don't? What are the ones that really get the most value out of that technology and the technologies that you provide and train their team up, shall we say, with? But of your clients, what does separate those that really get value out of it and those that maybe don't really yield the benefits, would you say?
Yeah, I think it goes back to some of the things we've been discussing already, and that investment, not necessarily investment in capital, but also just investment in the will to do things and the will to go on a journey as such. I like to think of all of my customers as partners more than customers, really. It's that old engineer in my head. If I'm providing a solution to a plant or a site or a company, then I want to see that plant all the way through myself to success. I want to see them at the end of all of the training and support for them to say, "Hey, look what we found, and we avoided this, and it saved us this." And that to me is like, there we go. That's my what I get out of bed for each day. Is that person telling me, "Look what I found," and seeing their faces when they're like really happy. Um, and companies need to be invested to be able to do that, to get the best out of it. Listening to our advice, because the thing is, and I think this is sometimes, the world of sales gets a bad name at times. And people, especially from industry can look at a person coming in from a company going, "Oh, you're just another sales guy. You're going to tell me the sales talk. You're going to try and sell me something that I might not need," and things like that. And that upsets me. That bothers me because I like to go to a site and normally I always use some phrases when they say, "Oh, you're just a sales guy." I tell them, "No, I'm not. I'm an engineer by trade. So I'm different. I'm honest." But I kind of, if something works for them, it works. If the application, the issues they've got, it doesn't work, the ultrasound doesn't work, I'll tell them. I'll tell them what might work instead and where they can look for that sort of thing. But it's a looking at, I come at an approach with these customers with a view of asking lots of questions of their sites, their needs, their objectives, what their strategy is, so that I can get a better understanding. And then from that, I can paint a picture of different options and what they look like. And the key thing there, and I can tell whether if things are going to be a success or not, is depending on how they react to those options. And, I can give a cheap option, I can give a middle option, I can give an expensive option. But what are the differences and what it will do for them? Or they'll have an application and I'll tell them, well, you've got these two options. This one won't, it'll do it to a certain amount, but it's not really going to work. But this one is a few £1,000s extra, but it'll cover absolutely everything you want and do everything you're describing to me. And then they go and purchase the cheap one because it's cheaper. And you go, okay, so you didn't listen to me then. You listened to a certain extent, but you went, no, that's cheaper, so we're going to do that. And it doesn't work. And then 5-6 years down the line, they come back going, do you know what? I think we're going to get that one that you recommended now. I'm like, well, okay, fine, but it's better late than never. But those sort of things, it's just listening and having that partnership. At UE, we have that. We everyone has a trade as such. Everyone has a background and knowledge. They've been on the tools. They've been there. They've done that. They understand it. So we have that invested partnership because we want to see success. We want to see them taking those ultra probes out into the field and finding these problems, and that's done through a partnership, through support, through training. A lot of companies will provide equipment and then train them and then walk away. And that's it, job done. But we have that support arm afterwards. We want to make sure that, is everything going okay? Is there any problems? Has anyone new come in that needs a little bit of extra support? You get training. And at that point, from a training perspective, there's a few stages. And if they're investing in a technology, they'll start unconsciously incompetent, where they don't understand what they need to do and they don't know how to get to the end of it. And then by the end of the training, they become what we call consciously competent. They know what they need to do. They know how to get there now, but they have to really think hard. Support afterwards gets them to a point where eventually they'll be unconsciously competent, where they're doing things without thinking. But that takes support and time afterwards. And you got to hold their hand for some time. And that's what we do. If people don't contact me, I contact them and go, hey, how's things going? Oh, we're doing fine. Everything's great. Okay, that's good. I'm happy with that then. Brilliant. But then you call them and they go, oh, yeah, actually, we needed this, or we have had a problem with this. And people's, own beliefs kind of get in the way, their pride as such. They don't want to ask for help because they've been trained already, but it's okay. You can ask. We're always there to help. So I think that's what we see the differences between people that get the most out of it and those that don't, is investing with us as a partnership to actually make the benefits, because we want to help that. So it's up to the other side to then come and join us on that journey as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm a big believer in that in regards of kind of the days of a win-lose type transactional relationship, as it were. I'd almost say that they're gone, right? Those days. Well, they're not gone. They probably still exist, of course. Hey, like you say, I'm going to sell you something, and when you try ringing me, you won't hear from me. But I completely agree, and I love that approach around partnership. It's a long-term relationship. In regards of that, and again, like you say, I love the way people might not always come and approach you, but you pick up the phone, check in with them, and you might end up getting they'll start sharing with what the pain points are, what the challenges are, when you do that. But you're completely right. Again, both sides have got to be invested in that partnership. It's not just it's not just a set and forget. Here's the product, here's the training. Now, you'll never hear from me again. It does need to be a long-term relationship, and I think that's absolutely the right approach. Right, it's a long-term approach to it. Long-term approach to relationships is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I think if you look at a lot of these sort of, predictive technologies out there, there's a lot of companies out there that manufacture these things. But you'll probably find a lot of the time as well, a lot of those things are sold via third parties, distribution channels that don't necessarily have that specialist knowledge. So, you can buy boxes off shelves, but then it's that support on behind it that makes it effective. And that's where I say with UE, we are a little bit different. We do a lot of work direct. We do a lot of that with our organization that provide that specialist knowledge, to make sure you get that support as well. So I think, I say people need to be aware of what's out there. And that's one of the hardest parts, is that awareness of what is available in the market, what technologies exist, what solutions are there for certain problems. And it's a big world to get that message out to. It's quite hard at
Yeah,
times.
absolutely is, and it's not just a, you know, like you say, provide the product. Yeah, here's 1,000 of it. Go and stick them around your site, and see what happens. It's, you know, it's, again, there's so much more to it than that, right? There's the education, there's the
Absolutely.
partnership, the support, absolutely, and the knowledge, like you say, right? Having that knowledge within your business is
Mhm.
absolutely key, right? To they go hand in hand, like as we've already
Yeah.
touched on. Absolutely. What are the biggest challenges you see in regards of getting that standardization and getting that culture embedded in large organizations? Is it very much what we've already spoke about? And if it is, we can move on. But when you come to a big organization, how does a company, let's use Amazon as an example, like how do they embed that standardization from your perspective? I suppose working for them internally, I had some good understanding of it, but from your perspective, what do they do well, those large organizations, around standardization and reliability culture per se?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's no secret that UE work with Amazon on a global scale. We're helping them with their reliability programs. I would say it's probably one of the most challenging programs that anyone could ever face. I mean, I speak to some companies that have struggles trying to roll out a program with 10 sites. And, I would say within a 100-mile radius of where I live, there's probably about 40 Amazon sites that are all running this program. So on a global level, it's a very big challenge. And if you think about a reliability program, we talk about data collection and things like that, having reliable, repeatable data. That is still a big thing within Amazon because we've got to look at the size of the organization. These fulfillment centers are very similar, whether it's a fulfillment center in North America, in the Middle East, or in Asia, or in Europe, still the same. And again, understanding how an asset operates, how it fails, early warning signs of an impending problem are all similar and things like that. And all of these sites are interconnected. This data is interconnected, and it's about sharing that knowledge. So we have to have a standardized program. We have to utilize the same technologies, the same tools, the same modules, the same points, the same frequency of collecting data, so that we can then centralize all of that and then look for those changes and actually avoid those unscheduled failures. And of course, with a company like Amazon, it's very customer focused. Those packages need to be out as quick as possible to those customers. And Amazon customer isn't necessarily a customer for life. That can be lost if things aren't delivered on time. And of course, we have all that conveyance in place that if something goes down, it can cause that problem or a disruption to that. Um, so, I mean, yeah, the technologies, the training, the culture differences from continent to continent, country to country, language barriers, um, present all different levels of challenge. When you're talking thousands of sites trying to do the same thing with a centralized team, yeah, is a strong challenge. But again, it's one that we tackle every day. We make sure that everybody that's teaching how to use ultrasound is exactly the same way. It'll be in a different language, but it'll be exactly the same. It doesn't matter what level of education they've had in the background. It's delivered in a way that everyone can go from one site in one place to another site in the other world, and they would understand exactly what they're looking at. It'll still be the same, and that's one of the biggest challenges I think you'll find. And that's something that I was posting about yesterday. We had some of our own podcast interviews with some of the heads of RME within Amazon recently, sharing their challenges. And if you look at an organization of that size, the turnover of staff, people move from site to site, but then join the business, leave the business. It's such a large organization. So then having to keep on top of every single site. And when new people come in, is make sure that they get trained up to that level so they can continue it. And then the programs evolve over time as well, advance, so there's changes that come in, and trying to communicate to thousands of sites that this is the standard. And then, by the way, this bit is now changing and we're doing this. That is a challenge that no other organization, I think, would ever be able to face as such. So, yeah, when I listen to people that say, oh, these 10 sites in my organization do this, it's a nightmare. We can't get it done. I kind of think to myself, this is easy. 10, come on, let's do this. I know how to do it. Let's crack on. So, yeah, we have a very good experience with rolling out large scale standardized programs. We have the teams in place around the world that know exactly how to do this. And Yeah, it's quite enjoyable. It's a challenge, but it's
It's a
enjoyable
good
because
challenge,
it
though.
takes you into different walks of life. You learn different cultures and that, but you see the benefits, and that's the bit. Like I was saying earlier, people then start to share the wins, the savings, and everything else. That's the bit that I look at it and think, yes, this is brilliant. And when it comes to Amazon, I can look at a package and go, we've helped make sure that that package gets here on time, and that's quite fulfilling.
Yeah, nice. No, good to just hear you get satisfaction out of that. Absolutely, in regards of, again, it ends up happening on such a big scale, right? And I think you've touched on a few things there. Interested to hear your take, but like you say, I think standardization, the way the business like Amazon has scaled, the way you can literally launch a building, but then also embed some real strong maintenance principles strategy in a standardized way to keep up with the growth and the scale of it. I think it is impressive, right? And only after leaving, been out of the business maybe 8 or 9 months now, but when you reflect back, it is really impressive. And I spoke to a few people about this. But it's impressive, like you're saying, it's because of the size, like you say, the natural turnover, how it is, it's a cyclical thing, right? Again, delivering that same training, you catch all the people that are new into the business, keep everyone updated on where you're up to from a journey perspective, etc. So no, it's challenging, like you say, but it's also probably the most rewarding when you have those challenges. So no, really good to hear.
Absolutely. And
Good.
one of the big things I think with those guys as well is that a lot of companies and industries will start a reliability program well into the age of their plants. Whereas with the Amazon model, they've done that with sites obviously that are of a certain age. But now going forward with any new building that's built, CBM and all the monitoring gets done right from day one, right from installation, right from commissioning, which means that when you've got those types of failure curves, when we talk about infant mortality, where the risk of failure is really high at the start, they're tackling those really early and they're getting those out of the way, which has a big impact then on the life cycle of their assets going forward. So they have those practices in place, which is fantastic. And that's, the holy grail, you could say, of when we're doing condition-based maintenance or predictive maintenance is starting at a brand new facility, brand new piece of equipment, brand new installed. And that's the perfect time to start this. So yeah, that's the benefits of having people invested at the top that are really keen to do this and they can see the benefits of doing it and why it's so important. That's again, as we were saying earlier, that industries face. The buy-in is there, the vision is there, and that's the best thing about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, it definitely wasn't always like that. I'm sure I'm not sure how long you've worked with Amazon, but it certainly wasn't like when I joined. It was very, the site I joined at was very reactive, not much in the way of standards in terms of early life cycle reliability, as Amazon call it, as you know. But again, to see that evolution, should we say, of how they approach it now, getting new sites on board straight in with the standards and yeah, the setup is absolutely key. And like you say, that matters because assets that have that failure mode and that failure curve, should we say, of infant mortality and that fail early, capturing those in the right way at the outset is invaluable, right? And getting rid of those defects early is absolutely
Yeah,
key to having a stable launch, of a building and them first
no,
few years.
absolutely. I mean, when I first started working with them, there wasn't that much in the way of communication. It was very traditional methods of PMs and stuff like that, doing time-based maintenance. And it was only when I saw a few presentations in North America from some Amazon people in different trade shows, I was kind of like, oh, this is really interesting. And then kind of started spreading that education across in Europe. And at that time, there was no communication between Europe and North America or from continent to continent. There might have been within countries and that, but that was about it. And as communication grew and improved and things like that, that's how again it spread because. And you look at today's level of communication, how people can communicate so easily, they can get that message out quicker and easier to people now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, brilliant. Chris, I'm very conscious of time. I've probably got a load of questions here I've not got to, so we might have to do this again in a few months or maybe next year, should we
Absolutely.
say?
Always happy with rules. Yeah.
Thank you, mate. I suppose just wrapping up again, conscious of time. How is UE Systems using and exploring AI? Are you guys uh, invested in that space? Are you using products with AI? What does that look like for UE systems in terms of that, the buzzword that is? And I can't do a podcast. I don't think I've done one that doesn't mention AI, so I've got to get it in there, it feels like.
No, no, absolutely. I think if you're not utilizing AI, you're falling behind, I would say
I
as
agree.
well at the moment. The AI is evolving at a it's crazy pace, at the pace at which it's evolving. People are utilizing it. And yes, UE, we are adapting and utilizing AI with our data scientist teams and our development teams in our product technology and everything else as well. You know, the good thing for UE is that we have such a wide range of customers from every industry all around the world that are collecting data points, that are sharing data with us, that enables us to be able to collate that information, to utilize it with AI to help improve the solutions that we can provide to those customers, that can then, look at some of the gaps that we were talking about earlier today about, level of experience, level of training, level of knowledge. You can, UE have ways in which we can use AI as an assistant now that won't necessarily replace a person, but will assist that person. You can then ask it questions, get it to interrogate, data, sound files, things like that. And I think that's the way that we're seeing AI going at the moment, is it being more of an assistant. In the early days of AI, it was more of a rule-based platform. If X meets this, it's this. If Y meets that, it's this, and that's it. But now AI is kind of, here's a sound file, here's the FFT, here's the time waveform. What can you tell me about this? And you'll have a co-pilot that'll tell you all about it and everything else. That'll give you some guidance or ask you some questions to think about and ponder on it as well. So yeah, UE are definitely certainly utilizing AI from an assistant point of view within our systems.
Yeah, brilliant. No, good to know. And I think you're absolutely right. In regards of, you've got that data, especially from an ultrasound perspective, looking at different sound bites, files, etc., and being able to map that, use some machine learning with that, with AI supporting it. So no, it's really good to hear. And like you say, I think the one that everyone is used to is that kind of chatbot feature, the interaction of it.
Mhm.
I think is the place to start, and really good to hear. And the benefit, right, and the potential of that is massive, especially a business such as yourself, where you're ingesting a lot of data. People are getting a lot of data in as part of the use of your equipment, right? So yeah, it's really good to see. Good. Um, but what's the biggest lesson from your career so far? The biggest lesson that if you could pick one, we've got some great stories from your time in the RAF, and reflecting on that. But what's the biggest lesson from your career so far in regards of what you try and take day to day?
Cool. That is a big question. You started with a big question, and we're going to end with a big
We'll end with a
question.
big question.
Yeah, that's kind of like, what's the meaning of life almost in a way, isn't it?
Maybe I need to
But
tighten
no,
it up.
yeah, that's it. I mean, God, if I could, lesson that I've learned is I would say, there is no glass ceiling on what you can achieve. Um, you are your own person, and there's nothing that you can't achieve unless you're willing to try. And for me, I've learned a few things about, having patience, but being persistent and challenging people and being honest with those sort of things as well is having the honesty, the candor, the persistence, just to challenge things and try and push the boundaries further and further. And most people that know me or work with me would be able to kind of vouch for that as well, that I will constantly keep pushing. Probably a bit of a detriment to myself at times as well, because I don't know when to stop, I would say. But yeah, those are sort of things that I've learned is just, keep persisting with things, keep pushing with things because you will get there.
Yeah, brilliant.
And you can go further as well.
No, fantastic. Feel motivated, Chris, after listening to that. It's brilliant.
I should
No,
do
you.
motivational, maybe.
No, I love it. I love it. I think it's great. I think, like you say, having that, kind of that. See, you've got that curious mindset, constantly asking questions, pushing for more, challenging in the right way, which is great. And I think that's a great mindset to have. So yeah, brilliant. Well, then I'm very conscious of time, Chris. I know you've got a busy, packed out day ahead of you, I'm sure. But thanks for coming on. It's been a privilege to have you on. Like I say, there's probably about 10 questions I've got here that I didn't get to ask. But really good to have you on, mate. And thanks for taking the time out.
No, you're absolutely welcome, and thanks for having me on board, Joe. And more than happy to come and join you again one day. Talk
Thank
about
you.
anything really. I can talk for hours. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be great to see your podcast and wish you luck with your podcast going forward as well.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it. I'll try not to ask such stoic questions maybe next time. I'll ask maybe more targeted one. Now, thanks, Chris.
No,
Really appreciate you coming on. Have a great day, mate.
thanks, Joe.
Thank you,
Take
mate.
care.
Take care.